Rio achieves his dream in a fantasy world wielding water magic, but is forced to fight for survival. Thanks to eternal youth, he becomes the strongest water mage. A fateful encounter turns his life upside down, beginning a unique adventure. Stay tuned to the end to know the full story. Our episode today of this new anime begins when the boy named Rio wakes up from his sleep. He looks left and right and uses a wonderful water power from his hand. It seems he's training his superhuman abilities. The scene then shifts to a world full of shadows and dimness. Rio says, "Where am I? What is this place?" Then, a man meets him and says, "Are you Rio? I'm so glad you're well. It's been a long time since I had a visitor." He then says, "Unfortunately, it seems you passed away after a very difficult accident." Ryu replies, "Yes, I remember that." Important note, this does not reflect reality in any way. What happens after death are unseen matters known only to God. Yes, we know that after death there is resurrection, and then either paradise or hell. After that, the man disappears, and Rio returns to normal life, trying to adapt to his current situation. He was living in the Rondo forest in a large house with enough food for 2 months. He finds that the house is a storage facility for food, which is great. The house is fully equipped to prevent monsters from approaching its immediate vicinity, acting like a defensive barrier. Rio says, "What is this encyclopedia? But I can read it even though I've never seen this language before. And this is an encyclopedia of plants." He then uses his power again and water flows. He says, "I think if I can imagine what I'm doing, there's no need to speak it, but I've always found incantations to be fascinating." He uses his power and fills the water tank. This is great too. He also uses his power and tries to light the piece of wood, but he falls asleep, exhausted. Then he looks at the sun and says, "It's truly beautiful, but I need to figure out how to make ice. How I wish I could cast spells like an ice spear. Ultimately, I need to apply pressure while removing its heat. I need to visualize the H2O molecules at the center of the water. If I can link the oxygen atom to the adjacent molecule, the idea will succeed." And indeed, it succeeded, all thanks to hydrogen bond. "Now, if I can make it take the shape I want, that would be wonderful." After that, he takes a hot bath and then sleeps. In the morning, he eats dried food and says, "It's best to start training if I want a quiet and safe life." He then performs water training aiming directly at a tree. He uses it again, but unfortunately fails. Then he uses a water gun and succeeds. He tries repeatedly, and the operation is completely successful. In the morning, he trains, but he does something new and transforms water into ice. After that, Rio uses his power to launch an ice spear. He discovers that launching it isn't as easy as firing a simple water stream, given the difficulty of its creation and its limited range. He has doubts about its practical applications in battles, but for now, training is the path to mastery. Rio continues to experiment with his magic until sunset. He feels like he's about to lose consciousness as this magic drains his energy. He returns home to find it dark, as he can't start a fire. Rio falls asleep and wakes up in the morning, deciding to venture outside the barrier. While exploring, he finds a coarse stone, which he was sure he'd find on the riverbank. Now he can start fires even after sunset. All he needs to do is collect some disinfectant herbs, and today's adventure will be a success. As he sits to gather the herbs, a wild boar monster suddenly appears. The boar tries to attack him, and Rio is terrified, but he gathers his strength to use magic. He successfully uses Ice Path, followed by Ice Spear, and at that moment, he manages to kill the boar. That night, he returns home to look up small wild boars in his books. He finds them classified under the lowest ranks, and realizes that this monster encyclopedia is a beginner's version. However, it mentions that the last 2 pages are a special edition. When he opens the last 2 pages, they talk about dragons, each capable of destroying an entire city with ease. A warning is written. When they see these dragons, they should flee quickly. The next morning, Rio goes to the garden to pick fruits. As he eats them, he finds them delicious. At that moment, a powerful bird attacks him. Rio becomes very tense due to the bird's strength. It's a killer hawk, capable of using wind blades, a hidden type of offensive wind magic. Its primary weapon, however, is its charges. While brandishing its sharp talons and beak, the bird indeed tries to strike Rio, who runs away, but he's certain he won't be able to escape. He decides to confront it. When the bird tries to attack again, Rio strikes its eye with his spear, and the bird flies away to a distant place. Rio lies on the ground, blaming himself, realizing that a peaceful life is harder than he expected. When night falls, Rio tries to return home but loses his way because of his fight with the hawk. He continues to wander and finds a man with a horse, but the man has a body and no head, so Rio ignores him. The next morning, Rio wanders through the forest, and a cobra appears before him. He easily kills it and then goes fishing. Rio experiments with his magic and strength, and it becomes clear he's very powerful. He shatters a rock, exclaiming, "If I use magic to increase the hardness of ice, it might be able to act as an abrasive material. Perhaps I'm finally mastering the use of magic." He then wonders, the beginner's version of the monster encyclopedia didn't mention anything about the Dullahan. Is it not considered a monster, or is it too advanced to be in the beginner's version? Suddenly, a creature appears and attacks him, but Rio parries all its blows and strikes it. Rio falls, saying, "I don't think I have a chance against it yet. But there's a reason I come here every night. It seems like it's telling me it will train me until I reach the required level." Rio is then amazed when he sees this man with a water sword. The man gives it to Rio and then leaves. The next day, the hawk reappears. Rio says, "Is that the same killer hawk? But its color wasn't so dark before." Rio uses his power and fights the monster, striking it many times. He then uses Ice Wall and Ice Spear, but the hawk evades and shrugs off everything. Rio is astonished and says, could it be some kind of dispelling magic? That's a dangerous ability it developed. Rio strikes it many more times and it falls to the ground. Rio approaches it. I hit its eye. Even if we both did our best and I lost, it would still be hard to accept. But at least our encounter helped me progress. I wanted to become stronger in anticipation of your return, and out of respect for the pride you showed here, I will finish you. Rio takes the sword, and the hawk falls dead. Afterward, a dragon appears and speaks to Rio. It's been a long time since I used telepathy. I wasn't sure if it still worked. I had hoped to ask you something. Did you encounter a bird here that evolved from a killer hawk? Rio replies, yes, I did. Was it one of your followers? If so, I must apologize. The dragon says, then you defeated it? Truly amazing work. I can't help but notice you carry a rare weapon at your waist. The dragon sees the sword and is astonished, then says, that's the Fairy King's sword. If he gave it to you, you must have done something to earn his approval. Rio says, but with your permission, I was hoping to ask you some questions as well. The dragon replies, you must excuse me, but I am being summoned. I enjoyed our conversation. Rio says, I appreciate everything you've told me. The dragon bids him farewell, saying, I hope we meet again. Rio then muses, I never expected I'd talk to a dragon. Anything can happen in a fantasy world. It seems I overlooked something. Then, an old man says, no one has ever possessed a hidden advantage like that girl I first sent to another world. That was 10,000 years ago. In Rio's case, his hidden advantage is eternal youth. This concludes today's episode of this anime. Look forward to the next episodes. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell icon to receive all new updates. Our episode today begins with Rio, who headed towards the sea, craving salty, grilled seafood. However, he found a horrific sight, a ship completely wrecked, and a lifeless person beside it. Suddenly, he noticed another person on the ground, still alive. Rio rescued him and took him to his home. After a while, this person woke up to find himself in a strange place. He went outside and met Rio. The young man was surprised by Rio's clothes, but he told himself, that shouldn't be the first thing I tell him. He then introduced himself, saying his name was Abel, and he was very grateful to Rio for saving him. Rio replied, it's nothing. All I did was bring you to my home. But you were the only one left there. I'm sorry about the others. Abel told him, don't worry, they were smugglers. Abel's stomach began to rumble from extreme hunger, so Rio took him to eat together. Abel commented that Rio didn't have any clothes. Rio explained that he couldn't sew any clothes because there were no fabrics or threads, and not many people here, let alone a town. Abel thought to himself, of course he can't provide necessities if he doesn't have money. Did I just insult the man to whom I owe my life? He then thanked him for the delicious food. Rio then generated water using his magic, which greatly astonished Abel. This great water magic, and magic in general, is only mastered by about half the population, even in the central provinces, and I don't master it. But I have a request. I want to confirm something. Would you please take me to the coast? They then headed towards the coast, walking through the forest. Abel wanted to lead the way, but Rio prevented him, fearing for his safety. However, Abel insisted, and Rio agreed. They then reached the coast and noticed that all the bodies had disappeared. Abel said, this means, if you hadn't saved me, Rio, I would most likely have met the same fate. Abel then boarded the ship and checked for something. Unfortunately, he didn't find what he was looking for. I must meet my friends. Lawntown would be a good start, but it seems I've drifted far to the south. Rio said, I think reaching that town requires a long journey to the north. Abel suggested that Rio accompany him on his journey. I need your help, Rio, because frankly, I have no idea where I am or how to get to Lawntown. Rio was happy and agreed to go with him on his journey, but he would need to prepare for it, so he suggested they leave tomorrow. Abel was very happy with his agreement. When night fell, Rio went to bid someone farewell because he only appeared at such a time. I want to tell him I'll be away for a while. Abel was surprised because Rio had told him before that no one lived here. But he believed Rio had gone to visit someone dear to him. Abel thought to himself that perhaps Rio had gone to visit a loved one. There was no guarantee he'd always lived there alone, and it wasn't his business to pry. Afterwards, Rio went to meet the mysterious man, informing him that he'd be away from Rondo Forest for a while, starting tomorrow. He expressed immense gratitude for everything the man had provided, stating that he'd managed to stay alive thanks to him. Today was their last bout, so he would fight harder than usual. Indeed, they had an intense spar, with Rio landing many blows, but the man managed to block every single one. After the spar, the mysterious man gave Rio an outfit, which delighted Rio greatly. He put it on and thanked the man for everything he did. The next morning, Rio met Abel, and they set off on their journey. As they walked, they sensed a monster about to attack. Abel told Rio to stay back and observe what he did. Abel ran towards the monster and sliced it in half with his sword. Rio was impressed by his skills. Abel explained that his strength resembled techniques used by swordsmen and others who fight with weapons. They continued on their way and heard a sound coming from the river. They found that it was lizards in the river. Abel told Rio that they were strong opponents in the swamp and that they should take a different route than through the forest. As they moved, Rio felt the lizards were pursuing them, so they had to fight and defend themselves. Rio decided to use his magic in the fight because of their large numbers. Indeed, Rio used one of his spells to kill these lizards. Abel was amazed by this power and asked him about the type of spell and where he learned it. Rio told him that he wasn't sure if it was ice lance or water spell. Abel told him, "You made 4 spears appear at once. Don't spells usually cast a single shot? That's what the wind magician I know says." Rio replied, "Perhaps it's different for wind magic, but this is quite normal for water magic." Abel said, "That seems strange, but never mind, let's keep going." Rio then used his power and gave Abel a cup of water, telling him, "We should drink regularly as we walk." Abel asked him, "Wasn't the incantation you used to create water last time, 'Let water be born'?" Rio didn't answer him, changed the subject, and they left. On their way, Abel gave Rio a piece of money. Rio was astonished, saying, "I've never seen money before." Abel informed him, "This is a bronze florin, used in the kingdom of Knightly, where Lone is located. In the central provinces, each region mints its own currency, but they all use the same denominations. The kingdom of Knightly is part of these central provinces and one of 3 major nations. The other 2 are the Dabogi Empire and the Handaleo Federation." After that, they saw many stones attacking them, but they used their magic to destroy them. Then Abel said to Rio, "This is very bad. We've entered a stone golem nest. I always thought golems were more human-like, with arms and legs. I'll try to deal with the nearby ones. You stay put." Abel then attacked a stone and broke it, but it regenerated again. Rio said, "There's an attack I'd like to try. Do you mind if I try it?" Abel agreed, and Rio used his power, activating a 10-layered ice wall, finally destroying all the stones. Abel was amazed and asked him what that was. Rio replied, "I took care of 2 golems. I'll use the same spell on the rest." Afterwards, they found the last stone. Rio said it was no longer moving and might absorb energy from the ground. After it was overthrown, it couldn't move anymore. Then Abel told him that this was a magic stone, a large one at that, and its color was clearly shiny. "It seems this thing has defeated any monster it encountered for years," Rio told him. "I think this is our spoils of war. I want to collect them from the rest of the stone golems too." After that, they heard a strange sound. They noticed a giant hippopotamus. Abel said, "I've never seen one up close like this before, but I think it's a behemoth." Then they noticed wyvern birds in the sky. Rio said, "It looks like we're going to witness a monster battle from the front row. However, it's clear the advantage isn't with the behemoth. I don't think little Behe will be easily defeated." The birds attacked the hippopotamus, but the hippopotamus roared at them, killing them all. Rio said, "I'm sure that was a dispel. I was expecting the second round to be between little Behe and Abel." Abel replied, "That was a dispel. I've heard of traps and dungeons that have this effect." He added, "The only dungeon in the central provinces is in Lon, the town we're going to." Rio was surprised, saying, "You were hiding the secret from me," Abel replied. "That wasn't my intention. I didn't know you were interested in dungeons." Then he asked him if he knew about dwarves and elves. He explained that dwarves are skilled craftsmen and fierce fighters, and there's a group of them in Lon. As for elves, he thought there was only one in Lon, as most of them build settlements in forests and don't leave them. The next day, they continued their journey. Rio said that once they crossed these mountains, they would be closer to human lands. Rio then remembered his conversation with the dragon when it said, "This land is surrounded by the sea to the east, west, and south. To its north is a mountain range that separates it from the neighboring continent, so it's unlikely you'll encounter any humans coming south from their lands in the north." Suddenly, a hideous hawk appeared before them. Rio and Abel were very scared. Then Abel threw it some food, which it took and left. Abel said, "Nevertheless, that thing left an unforgettable impression. We wouldn't have come out alive if we'd fought it. Humans weren't created to fight monsters. No encounters with behemoths and drowned have been reported for centuries. Something is wrong with this place," Rio told him. "That's a harsh expression. Perhaps humans aren't putting in enough effort. I think the wyverns that fought little Behe came from the north. They saw the bird again." Abel said, "Wyverns are much stronger. If the 2 of us were to face them, it would take 20 adventurers, and even then there would be casualties." Rio replied, "But I have a feeling we'll face quite a few. We might not be able to avoid fighting." Rio asked, "Wouldn't it be easier to fight them if they were preoccupied on the ground?" Rio replied that this would certainly be better, since he could reach them with his sword. When Rio heard this, he rushed towards it. Abel tried to stop him but couldn't. Then Rio used his ice spears that penetrate everything to stab his enemies. Indeed, the ice spears landed on the monsters, killing some of them, while Abel tried to kill the others, but Rio beat him to it, killing them with his ice spear. After that, they took the crystals that came out of the monsters' bodies. Rio talked to Abel and asked him if he preferred a decisive battle where his heart raced, or what. Abel replied that he didn't want that, but in reality this was perfect and they should continue the plan. Before they did anything, a group of wyvern monsters approached them. They decided to eliminate them because they would block their path, so it made no difference whether they fought them now or later, as they would continue to eliminate them on their way. Thus ends today's episode. If you liked the video, please click like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell icon to receive all new updates. The episode begins with Rio and Abel continue their journey while discussing whether they should ever risk running into wyverns again. While Rio doesn't mind fighting these monstrous beasts, Abel doesn't want to face such danger. Still, he is glad that Rio did fight the wyverns earlier, as they now have a whole bag of magic stones that they can trade for a lot of money. Anyway, the two of them reach an area far north and notice a thin road in the distance, which indicates that they will find a town if they follow the road. Abel looks around, and since the road leads to what looks like frickin' Mount Everest to the east, he thinks they should start walking west instead. Abel seems to recognize the icy mountains, but he doesn't tell Rio about it and only informs him that if they follow the path east, they will reach a town named Kiadi. Rio is glad to hear this news and expresses how much he's been wanting to sleep in a bed recently. Abel is surprised to hear that Rio is a relaxer type guy, as he's thought of Rio as a caveman who only wants to fight monsters. In any case, Abel starts suggesting to Rio what he should do once they reach Kiad, telling him about the local cuisine, which, according to him, is extremely tasty. It doesn't take the two friends too much time to reach the town, and once they do, they enter a local restaurant for food, where Abel informs Rio about adventurer guilds, advising him to register as an adventurer since he's quite strong. According to Abel, the guild card also acts as an identity card, and with it, Rio will get permission to enter anywhere in this nation, for free. Rio does like the idea, since this time when they entered the town, Abel had to pay the guards a silver coin for him at the gate so he could enter. Abel also tells Rio another perk of joining the Adventurers Guild, which is that he can trade magic stones and monster loot, but also mentions that he would have to be an alchemist to make use of such items. Sebastian, Rio, a chemistry lover, is highly interested in alchemy, so he starts considering becoming an adventurer. The waitress serves them curry and rice, and Rio is honestly surprised that this world too has the generic food items from his previous world. He whispers to himself how, in generic EI anime, the protagonist has to go through a lot before they can recreate food from their home world. And since food like curry already exists here in the world of EI, Rio considers this a total blessing. In any case, he digs in and becomes a bro mukbanger, asking for seconds and thirds. The next morning, he once again mentions how much he loved the curry, making Abel wonder if this caveman never ate decent food before. Since Abel didn't mention anything about the town having curry, Rio jokes that Abel is perhaps keeping more juicy secrets from him, which catches Abel off guard, hinting that he is perhaps keeping some secret from Rio. The two begin their journey again through meadows and farmlands, and soon find themselves on the outskirts of their destination, the town of As they reach the entrance gate of the town, the gate guard recognizes Abel and is shocked to see him, because there's been news of him going missing. Abel doesn't have the time to explain the situation, but just tells the guard that the man here with him saved his life. The guard thanks Rio for saving Abel and very enthusiastically shakes Rio's hand. Since Rio hasn't registered as an adventurer yet, he needs to pay an entry fee, and Abel once again does it for him, paying the guard a silver coin as the fee. The guard once again welcomes Abel back to town and asks him what he plans to do now. As they converse, Rio realizes that Abel must be pretty famous and quite friendly with everyone here. Anyway, Abel and Rio make their way to the Adventurers Guild first, and on their way, Abel tells Rio that normally when a person registers, their rank starts from rank F. But since Abel is a veteran adventurer, he thinks he can vouch for Rio's skill. And with that reference, Rio can start from E or even D. The regular ranking rules apply in this world as well, which means that the higher a person's rank is, the more difficult the quest they can take. Abel doesn't think Rio will ever need to do any quest, as he believes Rio will be stacked with money once he sells all of the magic stones they have in their possession. They have so much that selling all of them at once might crash the market. So Abel wants to consult with the Guildmaster Aster first, deciding to have him figure out what to do. They enter the guild, and immediately everyone in there is shocked and overjoyed to see that their friend Abel is alive and well. As dozens of people surround Abel, Rio smiles, as he's never expected to have made such a popular friend. He goes outside, not wanting to get in anyone's way, and decides to take a stroll when he runs into an elf girl who takes interest in his outfit. Recognizing it as the Fairy King's outfit, Rio is confused because he has no idea who the Fairy King is. And unfortunately, the elf girl claims she's in a hurry, so she leaves without explaining, hoping they will meet again soon. Abel comes out, looking for Rio, and brings him inside, introducing him to everyone as the man who saved his life. He then pushes Rio forward, and everyone expresses how happy and grateful they are to him. After everyone goes back to their own business, Abel brings Rio to the guild receptionist for the registration process and endorses Rio, asking the receptionist to register him as a D-rank adventurer. The receptionist can't believe a man like Abel, who is from the Crimson Sword Party, is personally endorsing someone. She reveals that this is the first time anyone from this party is doing such a thing, and that means Rio must be someone really special. The receptionist approves it, but states that there's still a physical assessment process that Rio must go through too. Speaking of which, Abel wants to speak with the Guildmaster, and so the receptionist brings them to the meeting room where Hugh the Guildmaster barges in upon hearing Abel has returned. The fact that they could pass through that mountain and return alive is shocking even for Hugh, who is the Guildmaster. Abel asks Hugh if that fact is enough for him to rank Rio up, since he knows that there is no way a non-skilled person can pull that off. Hugh admits that he is right and accepts that he will rank Rio up. Before they could finish their conversation, a team barges into the room. The team contains members of Abel's party, Lynn, Warren, and Rhea. When Lynn sees Abel and confirms that he is alive, she falls on her knees. She cannot imagine that she would see him again. He stands up and goes to meet them and apologizes for making them disturbed. He admits that he would have died if Rio hadn't saved him. So, Rio is who they should be appreciated. Hugh knows that the party has a lot of catching up to do, so he excuses them and asks the guild clerk, Nena, to prepare the materials needed for registration while he lets the party use the room for their catching up. Rio attempts to leave with Hugh, but Abel calls him back, telling him they have something to do together and instructing him to wait by the guild after his registration. As Rio walks away, Hugh reads through his mind and sees he is confused as to how popular Abel is. He explains that Abel's party, the Crimson Sword, is the strongest party in the village, and everyone felt Abel's absence. Rio asks if he will be registering in Dank, and Hugh says yes. He admits that he knows Abel. Abel is strong. However, he also knows that Abel wouldn't successfully conquer those monsters if he didn't have a good support system. So he is very sure that Rio is very good too, meaning he has no problem with registering him in the Dank. He takes him into another office, and Nena comes there with the materials. He leaves Nena to deal with the registration while he does the paperwork involved in the guild. Nena introduces herself and brings a book. She asks important questions like Rio's skills and level, and also asks if he had been to a dungeon before. When he says no, she tells him they have dungeoning classes every month and asks if he wants to sign up. He decides to sign up, and she tells him about their next class by 9 in a few days. He is shocked that there is time there, and she tells him there is a clock in the middle of the city. Since he has no place to stay, she tells him he could stay at the guild's lodge for 300 days after his registration. After her paperwork is done, she brings his card and asks him to put his palm on a system. The system prints on his card, and the process finishes. They leave the room, and Hugh is glad that Abel is back. He complains about how the entire city had been a mess due to Abel's absence. Rio returns to Abel, who takes him around. Abel tells him they are going to get the money for the stones they have sold, and he also intends to buy clothes and a staff for Rio. Rio appreciates his kind gesture, but wonders why Abel wants to buy him a staff. Abel says a magician should use a staff, but he insists he is fine without it. Also, that isn't that much of a concern since he always has a sword with him. Abel doesn't even think he has a sword, but he shows Abel the sword by his side. Abel sees it as just a knife because it is very small. He says that it is a sword and he can use it. His entire life is a shock to Abel, and he also has things he is confused about. He needs to ask Abel questions. After shopping and a series of questions, he finds out that that world also has 24 hours in a day, 7 days. Make a week, and there are 30 days in a month just like Earth. With the curry he ate too, he can guess that someone from Earth had reincarnated there and changed the world. Abel comes to meet him, and he appreciates Abel for the things he bought. Abel informs him that there is somewhere else they have to get to, and as the guest of honor, he can't refuse. Abel takes him to his welcome party, and they have fun and drink throughout the night. The following morning, he is tired. He takes a walk to his lodge with Na, who admits that he must have had a swell evening. She talks about how Ra, Abel's supposed brother, didn't leave Rio's side at all, because he was so appreciative of what Rio had done for them. That wasn't really what stressed Rio. He is stressed because he drank a lot the night before. They eventually arrive at the lodge, and Nena opens the door. The room has 2 people already, and Na introduces Rio as their last roommate. The 2 roommates, Niels and Atto, introduce themselves, and Na reminds Rio of his class the next day before taking her leave. After she leaves, Niels talks about how pretty she is. Butto isn't interested in Niels' delusions, so he goes to speak with Rio instead. They exchange pleasantries and plan that they will be casual throughout their stay. Na knocks again and brings another roommate, Ayan. She looks young, and they ask for her age. She reveals she is 16, but her parents just died, so she had decided to earn a living by adventuring. Na asks them to welcome her and tells Rio to come for the class with her the next day. Meanwhile, Abel tells his party what he had witnessed with Rio. How Rio had used magic without a staff, how he used ice to kill wyverns and other things he did. One of the party members, Lynn, cannot believe what Abil is saying. She argues with facts that it could never be true, because magic uses proximity and distance. But Abil insists that is exactly what he had seen. He even talks about how Rio had used ice blocks to kill weavers, which Lynn thinks is impossible. Another party member, Ria, comments that there is only one legend that was that strong, and it was the Infernal Magician. They think of all they have heard about the Infernal Magician as just rumors, since no one witnessed it. Another concern is that if Rio is that strong, then he could turn against them or support the Empire. But Abel reassures them that Rio can't support the Empire because Rio hates the name of Duhai Empire. On the other hand, Rio laughs and jokes with his new roommates as he considers how much his life has changed. Thus ends today's episode. If you liked the video, please click like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. The episode begins with Rio and Ammon complete their crash course on dungeon exploration for dummies, and their teacher tells them that they are going to enter the first level of a dungeon in the afternoon. Ammon is visibly tense about going into a dungeon, but Rio tells him to chill out because if he gets worked up now, he will be tired by the time they reach the dungeon. The instructor then asks if anyone has any questions, and Rio asks him if there is a way to instantly travel to the floors they have cleared before. The instructor is impressed by the question because only experienced adventurers know about that. He says that there are some dungeons in the south that have the feature to instantly travel between checkpoints, but there is nothing like that in Lon's dungeon. After that, the instructor leads all the students to the dungeon that is in the middle of the city. He explains that the city was actually built around the dungeon, and every few years the monster population in the dungeon suddenly increases, and sometimes the monsters reach the surface. He explains that the walls around the dungeon protect the civilians from the monsters, but then assures the newbies that there is no chance of a great monster wave right now. Soon they reach the first floor of the dungeon, which is a safe zone without monsters. The instructor tells everyone that they are free to explore the first floor, but they need to stay close to the entrance. Rio and Amon team up, and soon Rio senses a monster approaching them. He tells Amon to strike the monster while he holds it in place, and the boy nervously draws his sword. A few moments later, a monster ant arrives there, and Rio immediately identifies it as a soldier ant from the book he read. He tells Amon to strike the neck of the monster while he stops it using icicle lances. Rio completely pins the monster to the ground, and Amon easily cuts off its neck, scoring his first kill. He is overjoyed at this, and Rio extracts the ant's magic stone as a trophy for their first successful monster hunt. Later, they have dinner with their roommates who want to celebrate their first dungeon trip, and they are quite impressed that they managed to take down a soldier ant. Amon says that he only dealt the finishing blow, and Rio did most of the work by holding the ant down. He then says that he wants to go to the dungeon again tomorrow, but he is worried about going alone. Rio offers to tag along because he also wants to explore the dungeon a bit more because he is concerned about finding a monster on the first floor, even when the instructor said that there were no monsters there. Ito adds that he has also heard about soldier ants coming to the second and first floor lately, and the boys are confused about the reason. Just then, Abel arrives there and says it is because soldier ants can dig their way up, and the boys freak out on seeing the most famous adventurer in the town up close. Rio, however, is frank, as usual with his friend, and then Abel asks the boys to take care of him because he lacks common sense. Mill suddenly stands up in attention and introduces himself to Abel, saying that he is his idol and he wants to become a famous adventurer like him someday. He requests to shake his hand, and Abel obliges, telling him to work hard but make sure that survival is his first priority. Rio then asks Abel what he is doing here so late, and he replies that he just got back from his recent mission. Just then, his party arrives there, and the girls are mad that he came here instead of reporting to the guildmaster. He tells them that he was just guiding some beginners who needed help, but the lowly Lynn tells Shaq's lost son Warren to take him away. The big guy carries Abel on his back as he screams like a baby, and then Lynn starts staring at Rio with jealous eyes. He gets a bit nervous and asks what she wants, but then the priestess Leia tells her to snap out of it, before apologizing to Rio for the disturbance. As they go away, Ito and Niels start fanboying after them, but Rio doesn't understand what they find impressive about that group of buffoons. Meanwhile, Rio tells Lynn that it was not nice of her to stare at Rio, but she replies that she was just curious because Abel keeps on glazing his magic skills. Ria admits that she is curious too, but Abel tells them they will soon see Rio's true skills. The next day, Rio and Amon go to the dungeon again, and this time they face some monster dogs. While Rio holds the dogs down using icicle lances, Amon proves to be a decent swordsman as well and takes down a couple of them. As they take a break after that, Rio remarks that Amon's swordfighting style reminds him of Abel, and he explains that his teacher was an old dude named Kiro who learned swordfighting from a big school in the capital. Rio assumes that Amon must have learned from the same school, and he sees potential in Amon to become quite strong as well. Amon is impressed by his knowledge of swordplay, even though he is just a mage, and Rio tells him that he practiced with a mentor, but he developed his own sword style. He then remarks that Amon's style seems to be very exhausting, but it is also very safe, and he just needs to work on his stamina. He tells Amon that Abel used to practice his form the first thing in the morning during their travels, and that just shows that even the most talented people need to work hard. Amon feels motivated on hearing that, and decides to work hard to become stronger, and Rio is pleased by his response. The next day, Rio visits the library, and it is much bigger than his expectations. That's what she said. Anyway, he asks the librarian to show him to the alchemy section, and she shows him where books for beginners are kept. However, there are too many options that overwhelm Rio, so he decides to take a break outside. Suddenly, the city turns dark, as a total solar eclipse occurs, and Rio stares at it without eye protection like my uncle, who is now blind. Just 1 second later, he realizes something is odd, and all the people around him have vanished. The atmosphere itself feels different, and then suddenly he feels an attack coming from behind. He is fast enough to react in time, blocking the powerful fire blast using a wall of ice. He wonders who the hell attacked him, and then sees a bad demon mommy coming towards him, walking like she just came out of GTA 4. She is quite amused to see a human in her space, and decides to have fun defeating him. Rio realizes that he is facing a demon now, and he is quite sure that she is the strongest being he has ever seen in this world. He wants to run away from her, but he feels that he won't be able to escape this strange space no matter what he tries. So, he decides to fight back. He immediately summons dozens of ice shields right before the demon mommy attacks, blocking her massive firestorm. She abruptly changes her attack, shooting an invisible wind bullet that pierces Rio's shields, but it gets blocked by his armor. The demon can't process how a human armor can block against her attack, but as she looks closely, she finds that Rio is wearing the Fairy King's robe. She realizes that he must be an impressive mage to have such gear and power to block her attacks, so she decides to cut him down using her sword instead of magic. Rio also draws his ice sword and blocks her attack. He maintains a defensive position as the demon lady keeps pushing him back, but she is much faster than him, and he barely dodges a deadly strike to his face. He decides to counterattack by shooting hundreds of icicle lances at her, but the demon swiftly dodges all of them, not noticing that the solar eclipse is ending as she wastes her time playing around. Meanwhile, Rio realizes that she is using wind magic to boost her speed, and then she jumps at him to deal the finishing blow. Rio manages to block it without much difficulty because even though the demon is fast, her strikes are nothing compared to the headless knight who taught him. The demon, on the other hand, is impressed and asks who the hell is he to have the Fairy King's robe as well as his sword. She creates a fireball to attack him, but Rio cancels it instantly using an icicle lance. This pisses the demon off, and she decides to kill him quickly because he can be a danger to her if the fight goes on for longer. She attacks him ruthlessly, but Rio confidently defends against her strikes. He finds a chance to counterattack, and that makes the demon lose her balance. Rio was waiting for this moment, and he launches a barrage of icicle lances at her. The demon creates a wall of fire around her, neutralizing all his attacks. But as their intensity increases, she creates rock walls to protect herself. Rio also changes his attack pattern, using the high-pressure water jets to cut through the wall and injure the demon. She is shocked when his attacks hurt him, but luckily for her, Rio was just attacking blindly because of all the smoke. He then decides to go in for the kill, but she jumps straight towards him to block his attack. As they clash mid-air, Rio notices the demon woman's wounds healing super fast. The moment he gets distracted by that, she sends his crashing into a building. But just as she is about to launch a powerful attack to finish him off, she notices water drops falling from the sky. She is surprised by that, but as a water drop touches her face and scalds her because it was even hotter than the boiling temperature, she screams in pain. She immediately covers herself in a rock ball while waiting for the boiling rain to end, and in the meantime, Rio comes down. Suddenly, the demon woman unleashes powerful flame magic, blowing up everything around her. She walks towards Rio menacingly. But by then, the eclipse is almost over and her sword disintegrates as sunlight touches it. The demoness says that they won't be able to finish their fight this time. And Rio tells her to get lost already. She doesn't really mind him acting like a jerk and introduces herself as Leonor, asking Rio about his name. He tells her his name too, even though he makes it clear that he doesn't want to know anything more about a demon. Leonor is surprised that Rio knows about demons, and she thinks that she should have done all she could to kill him instead of enjoying their fight. She then tells Rio that they will fight again in the future, but it is possible that he runs into another demon before that. She tells him not to get killed by anyone else because she will be much stronger the next time and finish him off herself. Rio is shocked to hear that, but then the eclipse ends and everything returns to normal without a trace of the battle that just took place there. Rio feels really odd now and he decides to buy some books and then get some rest. He first heads to the bank to withdraw some money that he got from selling the Wyvern magic stones, and then passes by his dorm room to meet his friends. He notices they are not there. But as he is about to leave the dorm, he finds them being bullied by some other adventurers. Mills and Ito call him a coward for ambushing them when they were injured. But the leader of the bullies, Dan, tells them that they can say the same thing when monsters ambush them in the dungeon, and they die. Suddenly, his lackey are knocked out cold because Rio attacked them from behind. And he tells Dan that he was absolutely right, but he should hear his own advice sometimes. He asks him if he is ready to run now that his friends are down, and Dan immediately rushes to punch him. Rio simply steps aside and hits him in the gut with his sword's handle, causing him to throw up this morning's breakfast. He then moves on to heal his friends, telling them that they need more stamina so that no punk ass can catch them off guard the next time. However, before that, he says they should all recover and relax. They hit the public bath where the priest Ito heals Rio's wound from the wind bullet. Everyone is curious about who could injure Rio when he is so strong, and he decides not to tell them about the demon right now because relaxing comes first. With that, our episode for today concludes. Wait for us in future episodes. We kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell icon to receive all our new content. The episode begins with Ito, Amo, and Niels head back into the dungeon, and after taking out a goblin archer on the 5th floor, Niels suggests they should head home for the day. It hasn't been long since they got here, but goblin archers aren't supposed to show up on the 5th floor, so he has a bad feeling about this. Besides, they've already made more than enough money for today, so he doesn't want to take any unnecessary risks. And it's a good thing they decided to turn back here, because further down the cave, there was a monster which would have absolutely destroyed them if they ran into it. Especially since Rio isn't here. Speaking of Rio, he is currently outside the city because his battle against Leonor made him realize how much he needs to improve. In terms of casting speed, they were both evenly matched, but Leonor was able to move a lot faster than him thanks to her wind magic, so he needs to work on his movement speed. However, Rio wasn't able to use wind magic, so he is going to need to come up with an alternative. The best spell he can think of to act as propulsion is his water jet, since he uses it for improved mobility underwater, but he has never used it to move on land before, so he's not sure how to go about it. For starters, he forms some ice on the ground, and then he generates several water jets along his back, but it barely moves his body, so his first test ends in failure. He decides to try it with more water jets next time, but for now he wants to head back to the library so he can learn more about alchemy and demons. Meanwhile, Lynn is busy searching through all the spell books she can find, because she's looking for anything similar to that giant ice cube spell Abel said he saw Rio use, but even the forbidden spell books don't mention it. If Rio actually pulled it off, then it would have to have been an original spell. But a spell like that would require an incredible amount of mana. So she still finds it hard to believe that Rio was able to do it so casually. Just as she is putting the book back, the elf girl from earlier, Sarah, walks in and she seems to be good friends with Lynn, so she asks what she's doing here. Lynn explains that she was just trying to locate a spell in one of the spell books, but she couldn't find what she was looking for. Sarah says she's sorry to hear that and she'd love to help Lynn search, but She just got back from a mission to the royal capital and she's late for an important meeting. Back at the guild, the boys head over to the front desk to give Mina a report on their dungeon exploration today. Nina is surprised to see them back so soon since they usually spend a lot more time in the dungeon, but Ito tells her there's actually a reason they came back early. He shows her the magic stone they got, and after inspecting it, Na confirms that it really does belong to a goblin archer. A goblin archer showing up on the 5th floor is practically unheard of. So, she rushes off to inform the guildmaster. But before she goes, she thanks the boys for the valuable intel. Once the guildmaster hears the news, he is just as shocked as Nina was, because goblin archers aren't meant to show up until the 10th floor. So encountering one on the 5th floor means something is terribly wrong. The guildmaster asks Nina how many high-ranking parties are still in Lawn at the moment, and right now the only ones available are Abel's party, Crimson Sword, and a White Brigade party. So the guildmaster asks Senna to call them here so he can deliver the news in person. A little while later, Abel and the others arrive at the guild in response to the guildmaster's summons. But Abel isn't exactly thrilled because he heard White Brigade is going to be here as well, and he hates having to talk to their leader. Once they arrive, Abel sees the leader of White Brigade, Phelps, already seated, so he gives him a shallow greeting. And now that everyone is here, the guildmaster informs them that he called them here because he'd like them to investigate the recent strange occurrence in the dungeon. Just recently, a group of new adventurers claimed to have run into a goblin archer on the 5th floor. Abel asks him if he is certain that a goblin archer really appeared so high up, and the guildmaster says he has already been given irrefutable proof, so the intel is correct. That's why he wants to hire both parties to go investigate the dungeon in order to check for signs of the great tidal bore. It has been 10 years since the last one, so there's a good chance that another tidal war is going to happen soon, and they need to be prepared. Both parties will be paid 100 gold up front and 200 upon their return. But the goal of this mission is simply to investigate, not to fight. So if they find evidence of the tidal bore, they are to return to the surface immediately and inform him. From there, the guildmaster will close the double walls around the dungeon until he gets back up from the regional knights. The guildmaster has already gotten permission from the local lord for it, but he still needs to inspect the dungeon to take any action. So he asks them if they are willing to take the job. Both Abel and Phelps agree on behalf of their parties. So the investigation is set for tomorrow morning. The next day, Rio wakes up early because he plans to go to the city's northern library to learn more about alchemy. Ido tells him the northern library is only accessible to people who are D rank and above. But that won't be a problem for Rio. Although Amon remembers hearing rumors that the forbidden texts in that library are only accessible to B rank or higher, so Rio won't be able to get his hands on those. A little while later, Rio arrives at the Northern Library, and the book selection here is even larger than that of the Southern Library. This place is so big that he's probably going to need help finding the books he's after. But people would probably look at him weird if he started talking about demons all of a sudden. But just as Rio is climbing a set of stairs, he happens to run into Sarah, and they are both surprised to see each other here. Meanwhile, over by the dungeon, the members of Crimson Sword and White Brigade have both gathered outside the gates to prepare for the investigation. But just as the guildmaster is about to open it, Abel stops him because he has a bad feeling about this. He asks Lynn to use wind magic to skin the first layer of the dungeon before they go in, and when she does, she finds over 100 monsters posted up right at the entrance, meaning the tidal bore has already begun. The guildmaster declares a state of emergency and issues a request for all available adventurers to head to the dungeon and prepare for battle, because they are going to need all the help they can get. Meanwhile, back at the library, Sarah introduces herself to Rio, and she is delighted that she actually got to meet him again. She asked Rio what brings him to the library today, and he is about to tell her he wants to research demons, but he realizes that would sound odd. So instead, he says he wants to learn about alchemy. Sarah is intrigued since alchemy is a difficult subject, so Rio tells her his goal is to build a golem one day. Although he's not in much of a rush to do so. Building a golem is quite the feat, and unfortunately, as far as Sarah knows, there aren't any books on golem craft here. But she does know where Rio can find some books to get started on his alchemy journey. She even offers to show him around since she knows her way around this library pretty well. Along the way, Sarah asked Rio if he enjoys reading books, and he says he loves them. But he hasn't been around books in ages, so he hasn't had many opportunities to read. Sarah laughs a little because the way Rio said that makes it sound like it has been decades since he last saw a book, which is kind of true. But he doesn't want to explain all that, so he changes the subject and starts talking about how he thinks it's cool that Sarah is an elf. Sarah admits that it's rare to find an elf living in human settlements, so she may be considered a bit strange. But if nothing else, staying in the city led her to meet Rio, so she wouldn't change a thing. While Rio and Sarah continue their leisurely stroll through the library, all the gates to the dungeon are locked down, and every available adventurer has been stationed on the walls in anticipation of the incoming threat. Before long, the main dungeon gates burst open and hundreds of goblins come pouring out. So the adventurers begin their attack and fire hundreds of arrows while the mages cast as many fireballs as they can. This is going to be a battle of attrition. So whenever someone gets injured, they are rotated out of the formation so they can be healed to continue the fight. But with so many goblins here, the guildmaster is starting to get worried that they may not be able to hold them off. Phelps tells all of his party members to make sure they conserve their energy, and Abel reminds Lynn not to use too much magic because they can't risk her running out of mana early on. Unfortunately, they are running low on arrows, so Abel doesn't know how much longer they can hold out. A few moments later, Niels and a few other Frank adventurers arrive, and they've brought every arrow they could get their hands on, so they should be able to hold off the goblins now. But that aside, Niels has a message for Abel from the guildmaster. So he tells him that once the smaller goblins are taken care of, Crimson Sword and White Brigade are going to have to face the boss once it shows up. A few hours later, pretty much all of the regular goblins have been dealt with, and the boss should be showing up soon. So the Guildmaster gives the signal for Crimson Sword and White Brigade to move forward and attack. They all jump off the wall, and Lynn uses her magic to make sure they land safely. But there are still a few goblins down here, so Abel and Phelps rush ahead to finish them off. They then turn their attention to the large goblin general that just emerged from the dungeon. But, to their surprise, it's not just one. It's 3 separate goblin generals. This is bad news, since there must be a goblin king nearby, so they need to finish this quickly. Abel tells everyone that he and Phelps will handle 1 general each, while Rhea and Sheena can go after the last one. And now that everyone is clear on the plan, they all spring into action. Abel evades one of the goblins, strikes, and manages to cut its arm off. So it shouldn't be too hard to take the goblin generals down. But just then he notices something off inside the dungeon. So he yells for everyone to get down immediately. In the next moment, a wind slash is sent straight at them, slicing all the goblin generals in half. But luckily, everyone else managed to duck in time to avoid getting bisected. The one responsible for the air slash was the Goblin King, and it clearly won't be as easy to defeat as the others, though Abel and Phelps rush in to try and catch it off guard. However, when Phelps tries to pierce it with his spear, it bounces right off the Goblin King's armor. Phelps is forced to pull back since he can't do any damage to it, but Abel isn't slowing down at all. He charges straight at the Goblin King and uses his perfect shadow technique to evade its attack before piercing his chest. That wasn't enough to kill the Goblin King, but Abel never expected to finish it off on his own. He then calls out to Lynn, who has been charging up a wind bullet spell this entire time. And once he's out of the way, she Swiss cheeses the Goblin King, officially putting an end to the crisis. This was the end of episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next. Later, Rio's roommates tell him that there is a monster hunting job in Neil's village, Kadi. But it is for D-ranked adventurers, and they are only E-rank. Niels really wants to help them, so he asks Rio to quickly form a party and take the quest. Once Rio learns that he will have to defeat some skeletons, his eyes light up and he agrees to the mission. Later, they discuss this with Hugh, who reveals that this job was already assigned to a D-manned party, but they failed to complete it. When Rio asks how that's possible, Hugh discloses that it was actually the villagers who failed to cooperate with the party and turned against them. Niels is confused because his people weren't like this before. So Hugh allows them to take the job and find out for themselves. He tells Rio to take care of these fools, and Rio promises that he'll be vigilant. With that, the party heads out and arrives at the village after hours of traveling. When they reach way before the expected time, they realize that their recent stamina training has paid off. When some locals recognize Niels, Rio jokes that he expected everyone to just ignore him, but he is less of a loser here than he is in Lawn. Later, Mills introduces his friends to a man named Boulon, who is the mayor of the village. Over lunch, Mills asks him why the villagers are troubling adventurers, and Boulon says it's because those adventurers spilled blood in the Eastern Forest, which is a place they were told to avoid by their ancestors. Niels' mood suddenly shifts, and he tells his friends that he cannot tell them anything before he seeks approval from the council. At night, they stay at Niels' place, where his younger brother Nilo tells them that Niels set his eyes on becoming an adventurer at a very young age. However, when their parents decided to go on vacation with the Attack on Titan cast, he stayed back to raise them. Nilo further tells them that the previous party ignored the villagers' warnings about the Eastern Forest, but as long as they follow the rules, no one will trouble them. Soon after, Niels returns and tells them he got the council's approval to hunt the goblins and skeletons. He also got permission to share the village secrets with them, but he asks them to keep them to themselves. He first tells them about their sacred guardian beast that lives in the woods, which excites Rio. The second thing is a shrine, but the elder wanted to tell them about it herself later. The next day, Boulon takes them to the outskirts of the forest, where he first spotted the goblins and asks Rio to be mindful of their customs. While they investigate the footprints, Rio senses several goblins heading their way and warns the other. Neil suggests they take out all but one so they can follow it back to its den. Soon after, the goblins appear, and Rio freezes most of them, allowing his friends to take them out. The last guy runs back to his den, so they give chase and defeat every goblin outside. Just then, a giant goblin general shows up. And while Niels and Amon are terrified to fight it, Rio makes ice chains to pin it to the ground. This allows Niels to finish it off, and they later celebrate with its magic stone. Once they return to the village, Boulon introduces them to the village advisor, Nasu. She then takes them to see the guardian, and on the way, Ito notices the crest of Earth Mother Goddess on her staff. He explains that the said goddess was part of the Seven Pantheon, but things changed over time, and people only worship the Light Goddess, while the other 6 gods have been forgotten. Nasu, however, is a strong believer and still worships the goddess of Earth Mother. She also reveals that while the followers of Light recite incantations to heal, the believers of Earth Mother never needed incantations to cast any spell. Soon after, they reach a cave where Nasu calls upon the guardian, who turns out to be a peaceful Fenrir. He introduces himself as Enkusen to Rio, which shocks Nasu because even she didn't know his name. When Enkusen says he's related to fairies, Rio realizes he must possess a secret trait that makes him eye candy for them. Enkusen then thanks Nasu for bringing such a wonderful guest to him, and everyone is surprised as to why he's grown a liking towards Rio. Inken then tells them that there are nearly 30 skeletons in front of the shrine, and he's locked one of them up inside using his own powers. Since that one is super strong, he wants Rio and the others to slay the others before fighting the final boss. Once inside, Ito uses his holy magic to purify the lower skeletons, so they move on to the bigger one, which happens to be an arch Shackleton. Once it steps out of the door, Rio creates a carpet of super slippery ice which makes it fall over and over again. After some heavy strikes, Ammon and Niels manage to slay the beast and tell Nasu and Bulan to enter the shrine. Inside, Nasu says she learned from their priestess about a shining jewel in the shrine, which eventually became dark and shattered altogether. She believes this jewel was acting as a power source for the cave, so she decides to use a sealing magic to ensure no more goblins and skeletons spawn. After completing the mission, the boys are on their way back when they discuss that they will have to move out of the dorms soon. Niels asks the others if they would like to join, and they all agree, except Rio, who wants to think about it first. Meanwhile, Hugh asks Abel if he would like to attend the Whitnash Openport Festival on his behalf as his proxy, and he hesitantly agrees. Elsewhere, the infamous Inferno Magician is training troops when a red-haired body arrives and informs them she is heading out for the festival. That is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for the next